props too. I got my scope here.
Yeah, no, I mean, honestly, it's
So we're live.
fantastic.
MattsTheBomb.com. Thanks for putting all that together, man.
Yeah, no worries.
Hey, how did you've been testing that Vortex tripod?
Yes, quite a bit.
What's your
I really like it. So let me put it this way. If you just gave it to me and said, "Hey, is this tripod fantastic?" 100% is fantastic.
Yeah.
If I had to buy that tripod, $1,600 Canadian, it's a bit steep.
And what are the really right stuff ones going for? Because that's really
the really right stuff is about the same, right? And it is the same level of quality in my opinion.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the NRL from Amazon is $450, and you're getting probably 95% effectiveness in that tripod. So really, like, it really depends what you're doing. If you're shooting off the tripod all the time, you're like a hunter and you need a super lightweight rig, then it makes sense. But if you're using it,
it is significantly lighter.
Yes, it is significantly lighter, and there are some features that are a big improvement from the cheaper Amazon brands, but it's not $1,000 jump in my opinion.
What about the speed of deployment and adjustability? Like on the legs, it's fast. It's like a 1/8 or a quarter turn.
It's a quarter turn. Yeah, it's very good.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, whereas the one Kevin has, the Amazon one, you have to turn it like almost a rotation and a half to get it to go in and out. Yeah.
Yeah. Which means you can't cheat when you're tightening it up. Yeah,
exactly. It is a very nice tripod for sure. But whether or not you want to spend that much cash on it, it's a different story.
Yeah. I think it's if you're looking at a top of the line tripod, it's got to be on your list to consider.
It is a premium product. For sure.
It's not a budget option. I mean, at that point, I'd go down to the aluminum ones that Cortax Solutions sell.
Yeah.
You have the same one. You have the same one.
I have the same one, and I'll tell you, the Cortax one is actually, as far as like if you're going to use a tripod, like you actually are supposed to use a tripod, the Cortax one is honestly, you can't beat it. I think you can probably get it for like $300 in Canada.
It's under.
No, you can't. Yeah. It's not much under. You're going to pay like $270 or something. If you get it directly from the States and you pick it up in Ogdensburg, you can probably get it for like $200. That's what I did like 3 or 4 years ago. So that works. But
I get it. I got to finish that video on it.
It doesn't have the height.
Well, if you're using it as a like just side support.
Well, also think about how tall Rick is.
Yeah. Like I don't even. I never knew that tripods had like third leg.
I guess
third segment.
That's the nice thing about these, like the really right stuff in the Vortex and the one
that Vortex goes over 6 feet.
Yes.
Yeah, they're very.
It's
tall.
crazy. It's crazy tall.
And that's really nice.
I like it.
And even if you're shooting on a barricade that's like all the way up, like at shoulder height, you're still able to get up there as a support side and have it. It's quite nice.
I need a step ladder.
Yeah, exactly. But on that note, I have been trying to practice without my tripod.
Oh yeah, that's good. It's good to get back to basics, buddy.
Yeah.
We had a question from Anonymous. Isn't the Vortex just a rebranded Leo photo? I don't think so.
I can't comment on that because I haven't seen a Leo photo in person.
Neither have I. Yeah.
But the basic carbon might be the same, but the difference in the hinges and the locking mechanisms, that's really kind of where you fill out the spec sheet on.
Is Leo Photo is that a good brand or is that a knockoff brand?
They are their own brand. They're not a knockoff guy.
It's a well-regarded company, I would say.
Well regarded.
The interesting thing also is that pan head you're using versus a ball head. I'm a big ball head guy, but now ever since I started using that pan head, I'm loving it. Yeah.
Sometimes it makes a horrendous noise because I think you need to keep it slightly oiled or something. It squeals like crazy. Yeah. So I might just put some grease on it or something.
Yeah. Graphite. Use graphite.
Oh yes. Yeah.
I'm looking at
grease collector.
That Leo photo. I'm not sure. It looks very similar, but all of these things look very similar.
I'll take a look at some pictures later.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Let's go live. 1 second. Where is it? All right. Stand by. Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 11. Tonight, we chat about optics and getting it all dialed in for competition. We'll discuss setting up your optics and all the different aspects you need to consider when you are setting it up for competitions. Again, tonight's podcast, the Rimfire Nation podcast, is proudly brought to you by Testro.ca. As always, past episodes are available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and on the Canadian Rimfire Precision Series YouTube channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps us get the word out and get more people up to speed on all things rimfire competition. New products. Let's take a look at what Testro has brought out this week. 1 second. Let me share my new product screen. There's some cool stuff. Very excited about the cool stuff. Actually, while we're there, this I finally got it. It's the Victorinox Pro. It's probably the meatiest Swiss Army knife I've ever had. It's razor sharp out of the box. Some lights dropping, and it's fabulous. And of course, you know what happens when you get something new, something better comes along. So let's see what Testro's got for the new. Hang on, where'd it go?
Rick, I don't think that's considered a Swiss Army knife because it only has a blade, right?
Yeah, that's true. This is true.
You're on mute, Kevin.
I was just about to ask if that has like multiple tools, because if so, that'd be pretty cool. You know.
No, sorry. I guess it's not a. Well,
it's not technically a
Swiss Army
knife, but it is a Victorinox knife.
It is a Victorinox. So let's share this one. There we go. So let's take a look. So what does Testro have? So as always, when you go to Testro, check out the just arrived stuff. And of course, the exciting news is the CZ557 Night Sky Edition 308 on sale for $999 in 308. He had a 223 model. I think he might have sold that one out. And also, I just saw this Hunter Pro in walnut. This is the one. Too bad I bought that Alu one. I would have gotten this one. I love walnut. I can't justify a second one. It was tempting. Asmir said, "Do you want to see it?" I said, "No, I don't want to see it. I can't. I couldn't." And again, for those who don't know, Testro is also in the reloading business. Hornady, Lapua CNR, for those that are shooting 6.5 Creeds, the 139 CNRs, and also the Hornady ELDs are in stock. So buy early, buy often. So again, just take a look at the just arrived. And looks like he's still got the CZ457 Varmint Precision Trainer MTR for $16.99. So if you're looking for a race-ready rig, your choice between the LRP or the Precision Trainer in the Manor stock, I don't know, man. $16.99. That gets you everything you need, ready to go, I think. What do you guys think?
I like the look of that stock. The paint job really speaks to me.
Yeah, it works.
I'm trying to find something that says scope not included, and it doesn't say it. So
No, let me say it for him. Scope not included. Unless you had one of those Savage deals, right? The XRPs.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Again, the stock doesn't have an adjustable cheek riser, though.
No. So you'll have to shim it.
Yeah,
but that's a 50-cent job, like a Maple Seed. Like 80% of the people that get on the line, we adjust their
you're gonna buy your $1,700 gun, then you're gonna put some duct tape and foam.
I did that. Well, you did that with your MTR, right? Everyone adjusts their rifles.
No, I've got that.
Didn't you pad your MTR?
Yeah, but he has like a proper attachment thing. It's not a bunch of foam with tape
there's
on it.
There's no such thing as proper. It's either works or doesn't work. That's true. Like the straps are worse because they'll slide around. With a vet wrap, that thing never moves. But anyway, I don't want to get into this whole debate.
You just get OD green vet wrap.
There you go. We got multicam. We had multicam vet wrap in a variety of colors. So that is the new products at Testro that just arrived. So make sure you check that out. And thanks again to Asmir and Miriam for supporting the Rimfire Nation podcast. What else are we doing? Anything else? Yeah, the Hunter Pro. Yeah, I talked about that. Oh, yeah, promo. I was talking to Asbury this week. Free shipping on Right-On Scopes. until Friday. So that's April 30th. So midnight, April 30th. And if you're interested in the Right-On products, I will bring that up so you can see the Right-On products. 1 second. And there is a Right-On scope for every budget and objective. No pun intended. So let's take a look. So I'm going to sort this by price so you can see all the different products and the interesting ones. And I think you tried out one of the X3s.
The Conquer X3.
Conquer X3. Here it is. So on sale right now for $769. The X3 6-24 by 50. First focal plane. So that would be the first one that jumps out at me in terms of something for ORPS or CRPS. The rest are second focal plane.
Yeah, so all
the
X5. The Conquers, I think, are usually first focal plane.
Okay.
Or I think there's both, but yeah.
Yeah, there's the X5 at $11.59, which is not a bad price for 34 mil 5-25. So that's not bad. And what did you think of the glass quality? Did you get a chance to do back-to-backs?
Yeah, it's good. I compared it directly to a Diamondback Tactical as well as my Strike Eagle, and it's definitely more in line with the Strike Eagle in terms of the quality of the image.
Okay.
I mean, obviously the price reflects that.
Yeah, for sure.
No complaints there. You can easily shoot out to 300 yards with the X3.
Nice. I think did you do a review on that on your channel?
I did. Yeah, I did a full review on the Conquer X3. Mine was the 6-24 version. Okay. Yeah. So
if folks are interested, check out Womfat on YouTube for his impressions and observations on the Right-On X3 Conquer. And again, until Friday, April 30th, you have free shipping on all Right-On optics from Testro.ca. Thanks, Esmir. Always a good guy. All right. So the main topic. Actually, let's introduce yourselves. So I'm Rick. I am one of your hosts on the Rimfire Nation podcast. Match director, organizer, enabler sometimes, and anxiously awaiting COVID to go away. So my schedule stops getting messed up. Like I'm getting hammered on everything, ORPS, CRPS, and Maple Seed. There's no activity I do that is not hampered by COVID, except for work. Actually, that's the price of lumber is just killing me. Anyway, well, Kevin, you know that. Anyway, let's not get into that. Yeah. So Matt, I'll let you introduce yourself.
All right. I'm Matt. I am a competitor, shooting enthusiast. Also anxiously awaiting for this lockdown to be over. I mean, all I'm doing is getting my matches canceled, but I can't imagine what you have to deal with, Rick. So definitely it'd be nice to shoot some matches, but for you, obviously it's a big thing. But I think it's looking promising for the summer, hopefully. So hopefully we get some matches out there.
Yeah. Kevin, how about you, man, Mr. Smiley?
You almost opened up an introduction for me to talk about my thoughts on the particular subject which you guys were talking about. But I'm not going to say anything.
Okay.
My name's Kevin, and I've been blessed to have probably about four rifles that are the loaner rifles. And my goal here is I'm just going to take them, sight them in, and capture dope for out to at least 300 yards for each one of them. So far I've done that with 4 rifles, which are under my desk, and then I'll have another 4 or so, I would imagine. So this COVID delay is actually somewhat advantageous because it gives me the time to do that stuff.
Yeah. Shoot, I forgot to bring, because I saw Matt this week, I forgot to bring the Area 419 Arca rails and Harris bipod conversions that Go Big delivered to me a couple of weeks ago. They're pretty sweet. They've got the T-nuts there that you just have to drill in and mount.
Yeah.
Those are sweet. So if you guys are looking for fast upgrades and you want to spend a little bit more than the $60 Arca rails from Amazon, the Area 419s are pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Pretty sweet. And I think we got a 10-inch and a 12-inch. Those should work well.
What are those going on, Rick?
The 2 Tikas.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think the MTRs have rails on them already.
The MTR has a rail, but the other one's a synthetic, and it does not.
I thought I put in a MTR stock. Well, it's going to be put. Well, yeah. So that MTR stock arrived also.
Okay.
So Go Big Tactical sent us an MTR with an arc rail already mounted.
Oh, okay.
Nice. So yes. So it's going to be a poser MTR.
Exactly.
Yeah. It'll be a sporter and a.
It'll be a sporter barrel and an MTR.
It's a wannabe. It's a fake.
It's a wannabe.
It's a phony.
Yeah. It's a poser. It's a pseudo MTR.
Yeah.
Awesome. Nice. And so I think I told you guys, I didn't tell everybody. We got the new Voodoo V22 in this custom profile, the Ripley Dipley. I wonder if I could share that. No, I can't share that video.
It looks cool.
It's nice. It's nice. So that'll be an upcoming build video when the ACC chassis come in. So that's going to be running the new Loophole Mark V HG with a PR2 and an ACC chassis. And I also discovered that they sell the skeleton buttstock in short, which is awesome.
They came out with that a couple months ago.
Yes. So I'm eager to try that on and feel more comfortable behind my firearms. So
very nice.
Yeah, that's it. Okay. Main topic is optics. So this is after buying your rifle, I mean, everyone's still asking what is the rifle that they should start with. So Savage Mark II, T1X, or CZ457. Those are the popular choices. After that, it's what ammo. Then after that, it's optics. And I think if you're shooting ORPS, we already said that optics really doesn't have to come into play, because within 100 yards, you're able to hold the target over. 6 to 8 inches is really the drop at 100 yards. So you can use irons if you can see the target that far, or just a regular 3 to 9 would work, because you can just hold over. But when you're shooting longer distances, a lot of things come into play, and we're going to get into all of the different aspects that you need to consider when you're setting up your optics choices and options when you're dealing with longer range shooting. So I think Matt and Kevin are going to take point on this one. So I'll turn over you to my esteemed colleagues to take us further.
Well, very quickly before Matt gets started, I mean, I disagree. Iron sights can be used out to 1,000 yards.
I can't see that far, man.
Yeah, I just saw a video by Mark and Sam after work. They have a 35 long Colt. They're shooting it out of like a Winchester lever action. He's got this this thing made out of like a bobby pin. All right, that's his rear sight.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, it's hilarious. And you just he's got like this. He's got his front post, and then the rear sight is here. It's like aiming all the way up.
Nice.
45 long Colt at 1,000 yards. It's really cool.
Nice.
I guess
if you're shooting at buffalo-sized targets at 1,000, that's doable. But if you're shooting little IPSC steel,
no,
that's not going to work.
So, Rick,
awesome.
you want to share the slides there?
Yeah, let me get there. 1 second. Where am I? Do. Sorry.
No worries.
I'm just I got too many windows open, so.
Yeah, I know that. I know that situation very well.
You know that pain? I just want to make sure I don't show the wrong. that fear. I mean, there's nothing bad here, but all right, there we go. So I'll go. Let's see if I can present this.
All right, perfect. Yeah, that's awesome.
Does that work? Okay, I can't see what's going on behind the scenes, but.
Oh no, yeah, we can see ourselves still.
Okay, all right, good.
Yeah. So yeah, today we're going to be talking about scope mounting, setup, how to use it, and also briefly on tracking tests. So we're going to first kind of cover a lot of people ask about Cant, right? Scope Cant, how do you get it in the system, different methods. So there are different ways to put Cant in your scope. We'll talk about why you would want to afterwards, but the common ones we see are adjustable rings, usually the Burris XTR, which have kind of like shims in them, and based on the distance you space them at can give you more or less Cant in your scope. You have mounts like the Spurs, Athlons that have built-in Cant into them already, so it's easy. Just pop your scope in, slap it on your rail, and then you got scope bases. Same thing. Like I got some props here today. So this is an Area 419 mount with 50 MOA Cant built into it. So that's what I use to get Cant in my scope setup. again, pretty easy. And you can use obviously any combination of any of the things above. I think Kevin used to use Burris XTR rings. I know a bunch of people that do, Thomas and Colin. I don't know if you have an opinion about those, Kevin, but I know they can be a bit finicky to set up. That might be one of the downsides.
Yeah, I would say that definitely it's the setup. It's very difficult to get them perfectly right. And because there's so much play in those spacers, if you try to level yourself and then as soon as you tighten it down, it'll end up shifting your scope side to side. So that's one thing. And then some inconclusive evidence on those Burris is because there's so many parts, depending on how temperatures that you're shooting in, you might get a zero shift. Now, I've experienced it. I know another guy's experienced it. And then we've got two people who haven't experienced it. So it's definitely inconclusive evidence.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's enough for me.
But it is a very common thing we see guys using the XTR rings, I would say. But again, they're just a little bit finicky to set up because you have to deal with the shims and spacing them. And again, sometimes you can shim it so that sometimes your scope is actually like canted left or right instead. So you got to make sure you're doing it properly. But yeah, those are the methods you can use to get some cant in your system. Now, why would we want cant in your system and what does it do? If you go to the next slide here, Rick, so essentially...
I gotta find my next slide. I've lost that window. Sorry, guys.
That's okay.
Was I muted for that whole thing?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
Nope. Don't worry, I'll let you know if you're talking and we can't hear you. So how much cant can your scope take? Because I guess ideally you would just stick it on like a 100 MOA rail and have maximum travel, but in reality you can't do that because you have to take into account how much internal elevation your scope has. So I took this image off of Precision Rifle blog, and I don't know what.
Sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, this picture is from Precision Rifle blog, and they're really good resource for a lot of these topics. But you can see here, just touching on it briefly, because I think we've gone over this before. If you put your scope on just a level base, like the top picture, your zero is going to be roughly in the middle of your internal elevation travel. So you only really have, let's say the scope had 20 mils in it, you'd only have 10 mils down to actually use to dial in your targets. But if you cant it downwards, like the second picture here, you're saving some of that internal elevation. So even though you're still zeroed at the same distance, you gain more travel internally to dial out to those further distances. So this kind of shows you, a nice way to see that. And you have to take into account, again, how much internal elevation your scope has, and then base that to see how much cant you can build into your rifle scope. So for me, again, I have this Athlon Aries that has something ridiculous, like 32 mils of travel. So I can basically put this on like a 60 MOA base and still have it zeroed at 50 yards, which is my preference. But if you have something like a Diamondback Tactical that might have only 21 mils of adjustment, you might not be able to zero at 50 yards with a 60 MOA base. So you have to kind of take that into consideration.
Right. What's the sweet spot for most scopes? Is it 40? Is that the minimum people should be looking at? Is that
I don't think 40. Oh, sorry, Kevin.
In mils, is that your question, Rick?
40 MOA or whatever.
MOA.
Yeah.
In the cant.
For the base.
Yeah, for the base. Yeah. Like we used to be, like we always said, 20, 30 used to be the old standard, but now I think people are.
I would say a good standard for CRPS is 30. I think that's a safe bet, so you can still zero at 50. If you have more than 27 mils of adjustment internally, you can probably look to something a little bit more aggressive. But you don't want to be put in a position where you buy a 50 MOA base and you find you can't zero at 50 yards, right?
I would definitely agree with Matt. Like if you have just a almost run of the mill scope, a 30 will probably work for you, because that means almost all scopes have 20 mils. So I just worked out the math there. I think that's
right. Yeah. Plus you've got your reticle as well.
Yeah, exactly. The other interesting thing is, how much internal elevation adjustment do you want in your scope? I would say a lot of guys these days are looking to 30 plus mils in your scope. It's pretty common, but some of the more entry level scopes that have 30 mil tubes, or 1-inch tubes, might have a lot less, like 20 mils or so. And then obviously you can't stick it on a 60 MOA base because you won't be able to zero it at at the proper distance.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I think every time you go back to that window, it it minimizes the full screen. Yeah. That's all right.
I'm trying to... All right.
So next is diopter adjustment. This you can do this after you've mounted the scope on your rifle. Doesn't really matter, but essentially this is just adjusting the reticle to your eye to making sure it's clear when you're looking at your sight picture, because I wear glasses. I'm basically blind without them. Kevin probably has 20/20 vision. He's a hawk.
20/20.
Oh, sorry. Okay, whatever.
$4,000 for these eyes.
Oh, right. Yeah, he got LASIK, I think. Anyway, so obviously all our eyes are different. I can't pick up someone else's scope and expect it to be perfect for my eyes. But this is the diopter adjustment is this this portion right back here on your ocular lens can turn, and it basically shifts the lens in and out to kind of fine tune the reticle to your own eye. And the way to do that is essentially first, you generally set your parallax to infinity. Again, check your manual. It could be different for your scopes. And you point your rifle scope at either a blank wall or up into the sky when it's a nice clear day, and you let your eye relax, and you can just look off into the distance so your eye isn't focusing on anything too close to you. You quickly look into your scope, and you fine tune this piece by turning it outwards, starting from the bottom until that reticle is clear to your eye. And that's basically setting the diopter adjustment. Now, you want to kind of do this a couple times. So take your head off the scope, look out into the distance, let it relax, come back into the scope just to verify, because your eye will adjust, obviously, to the reticle. But once you have that set, generally, you don't have to touch it ever again. Some scopes have locking diopter adjustments, which is kind of nice, but most, I would say, don't.
Yeah,
again, once you set them, though. Yeah, exactly. Once you set them, you kind of just set and forget it.
You use some electrical tape. That's your locking.
Yeah, exactly. Just use some gaffer tape or electrical tape, and it'll never budge.
I use one of those big broccoli rubber bands.
No, don't do that. It's too, aesthetics is key here as well, Rick. Yeah.
Clearly not for me. Cleanliness and aesthetics are not on my list.
No, he's got his nice pink cheek rest there. And there's nothing wrong with pink.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So something's not, like if the scope is well built, the diopter adjustment, even though it's not locking, like this Aries will be quite stiff. So once you set it, it doesn't move. But it could be an issue if you have like scope caps that hug the diopter adjustment. If you accidentally turn them, it could shift. Usually, it's not a big deal though. Set and forget type thing. All right.
I don't know this conclusively, but on the diopter, I'm pretty sure if you have good vision, you're not nearsighted, I think. Then you shouldn't need to adjust. Like if it's all the way in, I think you're fine. I think the only time you need to actually bring your diopter out is if you have any sort of vision impairment, whether nearsighted or farsighted. Both are you're gonna have to screw around with it. But if you have good vision, like you should just need to put it all the way in, and you're gonna be okay.
Yeah, it also depends. Some scopes are a little bit more forgiving in their diopter adjustment than others, just based on the optics setup. And even though you might think you have perfect vision, you probably don't, right? Like most people, I would say. So it's worth playing around with it.
Yeah, so I've got the issue. I had cataract surgery in one eye, so one eye is perfect, and the other one is like out by 2+. So when I go strong side, weak side, my reticle is completely blurry for my weak side shooting.
Yeah,
I always kind of.
There's one more thing on the diopter adjustment that I actually really don't like. The further out you bring that eyepiece, if it's all the way out, like you see it in that photo, your field of view, not your field of view, but your image looking through your scope is actually bigger, significantly bigger. You can test it on your own. So because I have good vision, I bring it in all the time. So it's actually the smallest sight picture because of that. So people who wear glasses and you have to bring that diopter all the way out, they're actually like at an advantage to how much they actually see, which is actually a little frustrating, but it's just an aside. It has nothing to do with the actual school.
Ooh, Mr. Perfect Vision.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, mounting scopes now, rings and mounts. Ensuring your rings or mounts are high enough obviously is crucial, because you definitely don't want your scope touching your barrel, and you obviously want to be able to mount it into your rifle in the first place. So you can Google just a ring height calculator, And I put an example here, but it's good. It works. You need to know, obviously, some specifications like your scope bell diameter, how much cant you have in your scope base, because the more cant you have, the more it'll bring your bell closer to your barrel. And the length, if you're running a 4-inch sunshade, that's going to affect it if you have cant in your system as well. And if you're going to be running extra things, that'll add onto the diameter of your objective lens bell, like scope caps and other covers and whatnot. And generally speaking, mediums or highs will work with most setups, and fine tuning it. A lot of people get really caught up on the height over bore. They say you should just have like a paper thin gap between your barrel and the bell of your scope. But I think nowadays, especially with the adjustments in these chassis and rifle stocks, it's not a big deal at all. And as long as it's not ridiculously high, like 2 inches off your barrel or something, I think most guys find, as long as you can get a good fit with your rifle to the scope and get that proper cheek height, it doesn't matter too much height over bore these days. Yeah. And there's also some good videos. If you just Google height over bore, it doesn't matter. There's some good content explaining why the fit to your scope is much more important than trying to get a minimal height above your rifle's barrel.
And everyone should be using a torque wrench.
Yes.
15 to 18 inch-pounds is all you need for your rings and scope interface.
I highly recommend torque wrenches for anything.
Torque wrenches,
because what's worse, paying $50 for a torque wrench or crushing your $300 or $3,000 scope in your ring?
And it's real. I mean, it's to the point that, it's terrifying. Yeah. Torque wrench, everybody. That's my. And
it's funny because once you use a torque wrench, you realize how little torque you actually apply at 15 inch-pounds. You're like, I was over cranking this like crazy before. So, yeah. It doesn't need too much.
Okay, ready for the next one?
Yes, sir. All right, so you set your diopter, and now you gotta actually, and you picked your rings, so now you gotta actually mount your scope into the rings. So we're gonna talk about eye relief. I got a nice little picture of Kevin there just to demonstrate what eye relief is. It's essentially just the space, the distance between your eyeball and the objective lens. That's your eye relief. Different scopes, based on their internal optics, will have different eye reliefs. It can be anywhere from 2.5 to 4 inches. And it also, it changes with the magnification as well, but we'll talk about that afterwards. So generally speaking, you just place your scope on the rings where it's still loose, so you can move it back and forth, and you can get in a nice, comfortable shooting position. Look through the scope and make sure that you can actually see clearly, so you don't have any sort of darkening around the edges of your sight picture, and bring that scope back and forth until you have a proper eye relief so you can see the image clearly. Now, what position should you do this in? Well, since we're talking CRPS here, we don't shoot in the prone very often. So I would suggest maybe doing this off a bench or off a barricade, because that's going to be your typical shooting position in a stage. And then once you have that dialed in, verifying that eye relief also works in the prone position, and you don't have to crank your neck too far back and forth in order to see it. Now, what I was talking about before, the eye box in your scope, which is essentially how much wiggle room you have for head adjustment relative to your scope before you run out of sight picture, changes depending on your magnification and your head position, obviously. So verifying your eye relief is set properly in different positions and over the entire magnification range is a good idea as well. I don't know if you have anything to add, Kevin or Rick.
No, I didn't actually know about different scopes having significantly different eye box ranges.
Yep.
Those news to me.
Some are more forgiving than others.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So the eye box is like the acceptable range your eye can be, fore and aft, and also, it's a little box, so up and down and everything, so you can still see through your scope clearly. And some scopes will have a much more generous eye box, so your head position doesn't have to be perfect, which are really good for positional style shooting, because it doesn't matter if you're hunched over or in the prone or standing up tall. If the eye box is nice and forgiving, you can just have your head on the rifle comfortably. But if you have a really tight eye box, or if you're shooting on high magnification, which usually limits it, you kind of have to pick, pick which position you want it to work best in, and then kind of deal with it in the others.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see if we got any questions out there.
For sure.
We're still good. We're still good. All right. Ready for the next topic?
Yep.
Leveling.
Leveling. This is people's favorite topic when it comes to mounting a scope. So, I mean, do you want your rifle scope leveled to your rifle? Yes. You can use all these fancy tools. From the left picture there, you can buy levels. So you put one on your rifle and then you put one on your scope to make sure they match each other, and then you anchor it down. Pretty straightforward. You have the fancy spur and Arasaka wedges, which basically wedge to the flat surface of your scope with your Picatinny rail. So it kind of just levels it out like that. And same thing with the scope jack, same idea. And those ones are expensive and unnecessary in my opinion, unless you're like a gunsmith and you're leveling 20 scopes a day. I don't think it's necessary to spend money on those. I like the DIY methods. You can actually shine a flashlight if it's bright enough through the objective lens, and it'll project an image onto a blank wall behind it. You can see there I posted a picture that of me doing that, and you can just simply use a level to verify your crosshairs are level on the wall with that projection with your rifle level. Or you can just use a simple plumb line and just hang a string with a weight on the bottom of it on a wall. As long as you can see your reticle, hold your rifle still and vertical, and then just match your reticle looking through your scope to the plumb line. It's super straightforward. And the next slide kind of talks about how much canting your rifle matters in these types of precision matches. I know, Kevin, you have an opinion on that. You want to share?
I don't really know how much my opinion matters. Because it's not conclusive.
Right.
So back on leveling your scope. So I level my scope by eye almost always. I basically get it on, and then I take a step back, make sure my turrets look level, and then I look through the scope, and then I kind of level my gun, and I aim at something in a distance that I know is level, like I don't know, something safe, obviously. But anyway, that's done. On the terms of, is the scope can't matter? I don't think it does, because I did a tall target test probably last summer, and I did it twice. And both times I purposely included an obvious amount of error that is like visually disturbing to the eye, where it would make anybody cringe. And I still tracked almost perfectly true all the way to the top. So no, I don't have a very good opinion, because I don't know if it matters or not. It's essentially the conclusion there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does matter. Maybe not as much as some people make it seem. But if you're shooting the further out targets, I would definitely check your rifle cam before taking a shot. Now, that being said, I think John Gingrich mentioned this, and I think, Kevin, you would agree as well, but the human eye is very good at judging when something is canted or not, especially when you have those perfect lines in your crosshair. If it's slightly canted and you're looking at a target, you'll naturally correct it anyway, to the point where it probably doesn't matter if you're shooting within whatever 200 yards for rimfire. That being said, I
misinterpreted the question. I think the actual mounting of your scope, I don't think has to be level. It's just whenever you're shooting, you have to be level.
Oh yes, it has to be consistent when you're shooting, for sure.
Yes, sorry, I misinterpreted your question.
Oh, I see. But you're saying having it canted in the rings doesn't matter, as long as you're consistent with that all the time.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and that makes sense to me, because you're always in the same position relative to the rifle, so it's always the same setup, as long as you're making sure your rifle system plus your scope is in the same position when you're actually shooting.
Right. Yeah. So do you have a level on your scope too, Matt and Kevin?
Yep.
You guys run levels?
Yeah, I don't have one on my scope tube. I actually bought one of those expensive $120 scope tubes, the same one Matt has.
Yeah.
And the Area 419 rails, so for anybody who has, and there's a lot of you, anybody who's shooting a CZ457 with an Area 419 rail, if you get high rings, you'll be able to you'll basically be able to be in your shooting position, looking through your scope, and also you'll be able to see you'll be able to see that at the same time as you're looking through your scope. So you won't have to move your head, You won't have to open an eye, right? If you shoot with one eye closed, it's actually very. If you have one of those rails, get high rings, and you're gonna really save yourself a lot of time.
Yeah, the reason why I have a scope level, a bubble level on this scope is because I'm running medium rings right now. You can see that level on the scope base is kind of tucked away, so I can't see it well. So that's why Kevin's stressing the fact you need higher rings to use it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do run a scope level, and I do verify my rifle cant before I take a shot. But you can also buy fancier options. Not all anti-cant devices are just a bubble level. You can get those fancy like $300 electronic ones with LED lights and stuff. And you can mount them on your rings. If you have spur mounts, they make fancy attachments for those and stuff too. But a bubble level just on your tube, the scope tube, is the most common and economical option, I would say.
There's actually a question here, Rick. I don't know if you want to put that up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can't see when I'm on full screen.
It's from Aaron Rodriguez.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we position the rings on the rail forward.
Oh yeah, okay. So basically, obviously, the rings have to be in a position where it allows you to mount your scope with the proper eye relief. That's a no-brainer. But I guess if you see where I mounted mine, I basically tried to maximize the distance between them just to give it a bigger footprint to cradle the scope. Now, these rings are so chunky. There's like a quarter or an inch and a quarter of coverage, so they're really chunky. But some of the skinnier ones, you probably don't want them super close together. Again, just because if you put any sort of hard pressure on your scope, it might cause a tiny bit of shift, or if you pick your rifle up with your scope, you're just putting extra strain on it. So having your rings kind of as far as apart as possible, I think, is kind of the way to go. If you have a one-piece scope, man, it doesn't really matter. So, but I would definitely put them on opposite sides of your turret. I've seen some people mount a scope with both scope rings on one side of the scope tube, and I think that's definitely not the way to do it. If you're having issues fitting your scope and rings on your rail, fore and aft, I would get like a cantilever mount if you have to. I hope that answers the question, though.
All right.
Going on.
Oops.
All right, so you have your scope mounted to the rifle now, proper eye relief, you have it leveled. Now, the first thing to do before you zero it is make sure you're going to be on paper, so you're not wasting ammo trying to find out where your scope is pointed relative to your barrel, essentially. So I just took this off of Jonathan Ocab's blog. I asked for permission. He's cool with this, but he has a good article already on how to quickly boresight your rifle, and you don't need any fancy tools, or you don't even need to spend money on a laser boresighter. You just remove the bolt from your action, and that allows you to look through the bore of your barrel, and you essentially just point that at a target. It could be a tree in the distance or your target board, and you simply look. You keep the rifle still pointed at that target, and you simply look into your scope and adjust the turrets so that the reticle is roughly pointed in the same direction as your bore. And essentially that should be close enough to get you on paper so that you can fine tune it with live fire. And it works with basically all bolt actions. There are some setups that it wouldn't work on, like something you can't look straight down the board, like a 1022, for instance. So in that case, you would just put a board very close to you, like 10 yards away, shoot it, and then go from there. But if you want to save some ammo and just get it in the ballpark right away, doing a quick boresight with just this method above is the way to do it. And I've done it dozens of times. It works well.
It's the way to go.
Yep. And this question I've seen in other streams and episodes that we've done, but what distance do you want to zero for CRPS? And my answer would be 50 yards. I don't see a good reason or justification to do anything else besides 50 yards. I know some people try to justify 100 yards and whatnot, but just do it at 50 yards and save yourself the trouble. Yeah. Kevin,
yeah.
Any differing opinions there?
No, I mean, if you're shooting CRPS, NRL 22, or PS, basically anything in Canada or the United States, your zeroing board is going to be at 50 or 46 or 52, but it's going to be around there. So,
yeah.
It makes no sense to differ from the standard.
Yeah.
There's no advantage.
There's no advantage. Someone in a previous post said you save elevation by zeroing at 100 yards, but that does not make any sense. And if you have to shoot a 50-yard target, you're going to have to either hold under or dial under your zero, which is just a pain in the butt.
The only truth to that is if you, this happened to me, if you have a scope and you don't have enough elevation. So let's say you go back to our first slide, and you can only zero at like
100,
75 yards or something because you don't have enough downward elevation because you have such a high cant. Then it would make sense to zero at 100. But the
ideal scenario would be you get less cant so you can zero at 50.
100%.
Yeah.
But if you didn't have that option, there's a logical reason to go to 100.
Yeah. And the other argument I want to present is when you're talking amongst your squad mates and friends, if they say, oh, my hold for whatever, 100 yards was 2.
Yes.
If you're zeroed at 100, guess what? You're not using the same data as them. So that's very important.
Yeah. And you can convert. It's not like meters and.
Yeah. The only time I didn't have my rimfire zeroed for 50 yards was when Kevin and I was doing the ELR challenge. And then we zeroed my rifle at 320 yards. Yeah, so that was the only time I ever did it. Besides that, just do it at 50 and call it a day. All right, we've touched on this before, so I don't want to go too in depth or behind all the technicalities of first focal plane versus second focal plane. Just getting it out there, which one is good for or ideal for CRPS? First focal plane. What does it mean to you, the shooter? Well, essentially, as the diagram shows, when you zoom into your magnification range on a first focal plane, your reticle grows with the image. So your subtensions on your reticle, all the markings stays accurate no matter what magnification you're on. On a second focal plane scope, the reticle stays the same size. So you have to make sure you're shooting on a magnification that the scope is I forgot the word, verified to, or else your subtensions are going to be off. So essentially get a first focal plane scope for CRPS, and zero it at 50 yards is what we're saying. Yeah.
And there are many decently priced first focal planes out there.
Yeah.
Diamondback Tactical, the Athlon Argos, PTR Gen 2, the Right-On. I think, is that a production scope?
The Xperia is a production scope.
Yeah, production scope. So there you go, first focal plane. I'm sure there's a bunch of others. There's no need to start trying to remember what magnification your subtensions are correctly set up for.
I saw a guy to match. He was running an SFP scope. It was the Viper HST, and he was like, "Oh yeah, when I want less magnification, it's that scope. The subtensions are correct at 16 times power, but he shoots at 8 times power. So he just divides everything by 2 or multiplies everything by 2." And I was like, "Man, that's beyond me." So I mean, it can be done, but first focal plane is definitely ideal for CRPS.
Too much thinking.
Power scope.
Or just treat it like a fixed power.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, let's go on to magnification ring and throw levers. Now, a magnification ring on your scope is usually just in front of the ocular section, so it's just this ring here, and it affects obviously the magnification you're going to be looking through, but it's also going to limit the field of view. The more magnification you have, the more your picture is going to grow, but you have a limited sight picture in your scope. So your field of view, or how wide of an area you can see, is going to shrink with that. Other things to consider when you're choosing what magnification to use is your reticle. If you have a lot of reticle markings, you have to be able to read the markings in order to use your reticle effectively. So you want to be large enough where you can read your reticle, but not so large where you have a tiny field of view where you're looking through a McDonald's straw. Your target size, the distance, your target acquisition is important. So if you're at 30 times power and you can't find your target because you're looking all over the place through your scope, bring it down a little bit. And if there's a lot of target transitions in the stage 2, having a bigger field of view is beneficial. So it's kind of a balance of things, and you kind of fine tune it. I'd say most experienced shooters stick within 10 to 16 times power in terms of most stages. The only time I really go beyond that is if I'm shooting something like a KYL target where I just want to see it up close, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, or if I'm shooting paper.
Yeah.
KYL is the disaster stages for me. Yeah.
We'll have more.
Yeah, no. And so throw levers, I mean, they're pretty self-explanatory. They just give you a little bit more leverage on that magnification ring, so you can change it on the fly a little bit easier. I tend to run them just for ease of use, but it's not necessary. And I'm touching my magnification ring less and less at matches now, where to the point I probably could run it without it and not care.
I don't even touch it anymore.
Exactly.
I rarely touch it.
Yeah, but unless I do have one. You know?
I think in the Easterns last year, I did zoom it in to try and find those targets up on that tree line at Battle Hill that was in the middle of that snowstorm on day 2. Just to try and find it. I couldn't find it. Actually, the other point on magnification is when you're shopping for a scope, put it at the magnification factor you typically run at, so 10 to 16, and see if you can live with the reticles the way they are. There's a whole range of how big or how small the reticle markings are. So I know US Optics has big fat numbers and others are a lot smaller. So just make sure you're good to go on, especially if you're a certain age and your eyesight isn't that good anymore. If you can read it.
The X3 Right-On scope that I tested has really bold markings, which for me I don't particularly like. But if you're running a lot lower magnification, it could be suitable for you, right? So it really depends on a lot of factors. That's all I got for
throw levers. That's a personal thing. I mean, again, we don't do a lot of swinging between magnification factors, so it becomes less and less.
Parallax. All right, Parallax. What is it? Essentially, okay, again, I don't want to get into the science and on optics of what parallax is, but essentially your image is in a different focal plane than your reticle within your scope, which means if your head position is not perfect behind your scope, you're going to have image shift. So your reticle is going to move on your image, which obviously changes where you're aiming at. So a good analogy is you have your target, let's say 10 yards away, and there's a window between you and your target at 5 yards, and you draw a cross on that window. Well, if you move your head, that cross on the window is going to move relative to the target. Now, within your scope, setting your parallax adjustment properly is putting that window on that target. So it doesn't matter where your head position is, that reticle is staying on the target in the same position. So that's what setting your parallax is doing on your scope in a nutshell. And turning that parallax adjustment, which is generally speaking on the left-hand side of your scope here, is how you set that. Now, you do want to remove parallax from the system. However, I would say in most stages at a CRPS match, I don't touch my parallax. If the target distances range from 100 to 250 yards, I'll just set it at 180 and shoot like that. It depends, again, on your scopes. Some scopes have more forgiving parallax than others, so do your own testing with that. And another thing is, don't trust the numbers on your parallax knob. You can see most parallax knobs have numbers that give you kind of a ballpark range, but most often they're totally off. So the way to check your parallax is to have your head behind your scope and just turn the parallax knob while wiggling your head a little bit until that reticle stops wiggling on your target, and you'll have your parallax set. Another kind of side effect of a properly set parallax is the image, it becomes clear or more clear. So if you have a really blurry image, it's probably because your parallax isn't set properly. The only time I touch my parallax knob in a match again is if the target distances vary greatly, like a 50-yard target to like a 300-yard target, then I'll change it a little bit. Or if I'm shooting a 50-yard KYL at ORPS, I'll bring it down a bit. All right. And also, your parallax adjustment will change depending on the magnification you're running as well. So if you set your parallax when you're at 10 times power and then zoom into 30 times power, you'll notice you actually have to tweak the parallax again. Yeah. Kevin, any thoughts on using parallax during a match or anything like that?
Nope. I would agree. You just set your parallax once and forget about it. But use an average technique. So
yeah.
If you're shooting at 100 and 300, just put it at 200. And then maybe the other thing is everybody, just to get a cool little exercise, is just look at a target and go through your entire parallax. I'm sure everybody's done this, but if not, you can just do it yourself to see what it looks like.
Yep.
Next.
Yes, next is reticle design. So when you're choosing a scope, there's lots of different reticles to choose from. And I have kind of two examples on the side here. When you're looking at a reticle, you want to consider some things, how easy it is for you to use. Some are very intuitive. The top one in red there is a vortex reticle. It's the EBR2C. And I find this reticle to be very intuitive. If you have to hold over, the numbers are easily seen, maybe not in this picture, but when you're looking at the scope, you can read the numbers very clearly. And it doesn't have so much information where it's kind of clogging up your sight picture and making it kind of messy. But it has enough information where you can do very accurate holdovers if you want to do that. The bottom one is a Horus H59, I believe. I could be wrong. But anyway, it's a more busy reticle, which some people prefer. But for me, that's a little bit too busy for the type of shooting I do. But if you need that much information in your reticle, look to something like that. Your shooting style is important as well. If you're more of a dialer and you don't really hold over very often, maybe a more simplistic design is good just to keep things a little bit cleaner. And other features, if you want to range targets or you want to measure something in the distance, it's nice to have a little bit finer subtensions in order to do that. If you only have 0.5 mil increments, it's a little bit harder to be accurate with your reticle and measuring things. So another reason why I like the EBR2C in the vortex example there is because on the sides of the reticle, it almost looks like a solid line here, but they're actually 0.1 mil hash marks there. So if you want to measure a target in the distance, you can bring your reticle over. So you're just using the fine markings there to measure it, and it's a very accurate way of doing it. Yeah. And windage turret.
A cool side note on the Horus reticle, though. I think it's the H59. It has 45 mils or something
of holdover
in the actual Christmas tree when you're on like 5 power. Which is just ridiculous, like whenever I found that out, I was honestly impressed. And if you're trying to do like super ELR, it's got an advantage to it for sure.
Yeah, that image of the H59 there is probably at like 20 times power. If you zoom it out, the bar becomes just like this tiny thing in the middle, and it has like an insane amount of elevation holdover, which is pretty nuts. Most PRS style scopes would have anywhere between 8 to 12 mils of holdover, just to give you a relative comparison there. Next slide is windage turret. A windage turret is usually on the right hand side of your scope, and essentially I never dial for wind. I would say 99% of shooters that shoot CRPS are on the same boat as me. So I personally like my windage turret to be either locking or capped. The Ares here has a locking windage turret. So I pull the turret outwards. It's kind of stiff from the scope body in order to move it. When I have it zeroed in, I just push it down and I don't touch it again unless I'm re-zeroing my scope. And some people have a preference. Some scopes actually come with an option. So the picture here is an XTR3, and it actually comes with an exposed turret if you want to just run it like that. And it also comes with a cap you can put over it if you don't want to see it, and kind of keeps things a little bit cleaner. I think Night Force does that as well. So
I think Midas has the cap, doesn't it?
Yes, the Midas TAC has the capped windage turret as well.
And then Strike Eagle is locking?
Strike Eagle is locking, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, locking is kind of nice because if it's just an exposed turret that doesn't lock, there's the risk of you accidentally turning it, coming up on a barricade and shifting it by accident. So locking or capped is probably yeah, exactly.
I've done it.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward there. Hold for wind generally. Very, very few people will dial wind once you're zeroed. And for our sport, I would say parallax and wind dialing. The reason why people don't touch those turrets very often is just because of the time time crunch you're under in a stage. You don't have time to dial your elevation, then set your parallax, then dial for wind. There's too many things going on. You just elevation and then figure it out.
And the risk of forgetting to re-zero.
Yes, exactly. It's just more things.
That's the other thing. It's one more thing to forget. Yeah.
All right. Going on to the elevation turret. It's usually on the top of your scope. And again, I touched on this before, but how much internal elevation does your scope have? Anywhere between 20 to 30 is pretty common. The more, the better, generally speaking. And the scopes with a larger diameter body tube will generally have more internal elevation in them. So 34 mil tubes have much more internal elevation than a 1 mil body tube. So that's something to look at. And when you're using your elevation knob, obviously this is actually adjusting your reticle in your scope. So if your drop data says dial 2.5 mils, you dial 2.5 mils, and now the center of your reticle is where you're aiming for that target. So you can use a combination of dialing and holding over with your reticle in order to complete a stage. Now, how you do that is completely, a personal preference. I usually do kind of a combo of both in a match. It really depends on the stage. But if I'm holding, I'll usually dial for my first target. So the first target is in the middle of my crosshairs, and then I'll hold over for the rest of them. So it's important to remember how much you've dialed, because your holdover is going to be different depending on if you're still at your zero distance versus dialed for the first target. Some stages I'll do both. One that comes to mind was at the Palmerston match. It was basically a troop line, so shoot the targets near to far, 5 distances, but you have to do it twice from position 1 and then position 2. A lot of people were timing out, so in the first position I was holding over just to kind of be a little bit quicker with my shots. And then when I got to my second position, I realized I still had enough time to dial. So I dialed those targets. Now, why would I want to dial if I was already hitting everything using holdovers? It's a little bit more intuitive for your brain to just put the middle of your reticle on the target versus having to find the number in the Christmas tree and then holding that onto your target. It can be quicker because you don't have to touch the turret. And I practice a lot with holdovers, so I'm very proficient with it. I'm not bragging. I'm saying it's something I have to do, because holdovers can actually be slower if you don't practice with it, especially if you're not used to your reticle style. If you try and hold over, you'll actually feel the further away you get from that center crosshair, the more tricky it can be. You can get lost in your reticle really easily, and a lot of people will just call it quits and just dial it for the further targets. But I make it a point to practice very often holdover, so that when I need to use it, it's like second nature to me. I can hold over 10 mils, 8.2 mils. I know exactly where that is in my reticle, versus dialing it.
And I think that brings up a good point. You got to practice both dialing and holding over, especially if you've got turrets that are in 6 mil revolutions, or in this case it's a 14 mil revolution. That you got to get up and get back down quickly. And remember, what scope is this? Do you know?
That's a Callus 624i or 525i. It's the new one,
because it's got that secondary set of numbers which shows you on the second revolution what the values are, which is awesome. That eliminates any of the issues with the non-decimal revolutions.
I can't believe that's a 14 revolution scope, though. I can't.
So wait, let me break it down for you. So this is the Collis 624i, I believe. The new PRS version has a 10 mil rev scope because it's a 10 mil increment.
I can't believe they did that. That's such a.
But as long as you get the counter, as long as you get the secondary row of numbers, it's not that bad, right?
Yeah.
Because you can, 17, you go to 17. Right.
Exactly. And the Collis actually has a second rev indicator as well. You can see that red thing that pops up in your second revolution. So it's actually very intuitive to use it. But their PRS specific model that just came out this year has 10 mils per revolution, and the numbers are bigger, so you can read them easier, essentially.
And is Windage really on the left side of the
scope? So Collis gives you an option. The Windage is on the left side. That's why I said it's usually on the right side for most scopes, but Collis is special. And the Parallax is actually right under the elevation adjustment. You can see there. Yeah.
That's pretty.
And it actually kind of makes sense, because you dial your elevation, and then with the same hand, you just drop to the Parallax and dial. It's actually a very neat system they came up with.
So
it's pretty popular scope.
What other cap then?
The other cap is their illuminated.
Okay.
Or illumination on the right side. Yeah. But if you want the normal setup with your windage on the right side, you can order to the Callis in that setup as well. They're very flexible with that. So that is big. Kevin, you want to mention? I think you're more of a dial guy than a holdover guy, right? If I'm correct.
I'm trying to transition, but yes, I definitely am much more comfortable dialing.
Yeah. So again, it comes to practice. Again, I made a really big point last summer and fall to really practice holdovers because it was just something I wanted to get better at. But it's very unnatural to try and do that right off the bat, I would say.
Yeah,
it is, and I will say this: the CRPS 2 minutes is a very generous amount of time. Where I don't think I'm not going to say I've never timed out, but dialing wouldn't have been the reason for me timing out. Whereas whenever you push, we'll say PRS rules, where you're talking a minute 30 seconds, I think.
90 seconds
time really makes a huge difference. But the additional 30-second buffer window we have in the CRPS world, I think is a, it allows you to have a lot more time.
Yeah, I mean that's a good point. If guys are wanting to practice, you should practice like a 90-second stage time just to get used to hustling and seeing where you blow time, whether it's getting into position, acquiring targets, or getting your reticle set up.
Yeah, where are you blowing time? I mean, a minute 30 might be a little short, only because then you're going to end up rushing shots. So I think what we do is we actually set up our time for 1:45 whenever we practice, so that we have a 15-second window. So we know, I think that works out well. But if in CRPS, if you can move quickly, I would say you're not going to be at a disadvantage by dial.
Yeah. I mean, like new shooters, I mean, you spend all your time just getting steady behind the rifle.
Exactly.
Like you can see, like time to first shot. That's what tells me how much practice time you've had behind the rifle on a barricade.
Yep, really good points. I think also depending on the stage, even if you won't run out of time, for me sometimes it's just more comfortable holding over. That doesn't make much sense to you guys, but for me sometimes I won't dial for a stage just because I'm comfortable enough with it now.
Yeah, it's funny. Sometimes I don't trust holding over. It's weird. I know it's around there. It's just weird. It's just a mental lack of practice, basically.
I think exactly. It's just practice. What you're comfortable with. Do you drive stick or do you drive automatic?
Exactly.
Rick, I think I don't know if this is, I don't even know what this question means, but it's by Doug Rodenbush. He says, you guys need to have an FNG on these podcasts so we don't have to wait if you read our questions here or not. I don't know what that means.
So like having Benjamin Pinnell on, like the new guy, effing new guy on the podcast. Like a new shooter, get a new shooter on the panel. So they can ask the questions instead of waiting for us to read the questions.
Oh, okay. F and U guy. Jeez, all right. Well, that went right over my head. That makes sense. Understood.
Let's talk about rev indicators quickly. Most entry-level scopes will not have a rev indicator. What that is it tells you if you're in your first, second, or potentially third revolution of your turret. So the Callis, as we mentioned before, has that little red button that pops up once you're in your second revolution. I don't know how well you're going to see this, but the Ares here, as you turn the turret moves upwards, which exposes lines on the turret, whatever body there. So you can see your rev indicators are these lines. So as you turn the turret up, more lines are exposed. So that's your rev indicator for a scope like this. I would say getting used to them just to make sure you're in the revolution you want to be in is pretty important. And if you don't have a rev indicator on your scope, always making sure you know where your zero is and where you are in your elevation travel for that guy. Yeah. And I guess zero stops is another kind of related topic because it allows you to know exactly where your zero is. On this scope here, if I dial it all the way back down, once I hit my zero, the turret has a hard stop. And that is another very beneficial feature if you want to quickly find your zero on a stage or just make sure you reset it afterwards. Again, entry-level scopes, won't have this, so you have to be more diligent in being aware of where you are in your elevation travel. And I don't know if you guys have nothing else to add. The last thing we're going to go over is reliability and repeatability / tracking tests, and kind of my methods of that. If you go to the next slide there, Rick.
Yep.
So how do you know you can trust your turrets on your scope? Well, that's where a tracking tester come in, because we all know, this turret says I dialed in whatever 4 mils, but how do I know it actually dialed my reticle 4 mils down? Essentially, how reliable or accurate is your scope? And to do that, you can run a series of tests. The easiest way to do it is making a target where you can point your scope at a central point, keeping your rifle still. So either in like a rifle cradle or some sort of scope mount, you make sure your scope is nice and still. And as you turn your turret, you can watch your reticle actually move up and down depending how much you're turning your turret relative to the calibration target. So I actually have an example here. This is one I made myself. I just got a big piece of bristle board and I just drew a grid. So this is at 50 yards. It is exactly a 1 mil grid in the spacing. And I'll just staple this to the board, verify it's at 50 yards. And I'll start with my 0 on this dot here, and keeping my scope very still. I will crank my elevation turret and watch the reticle go down. And I make sure for every 10 clicks, the middle of the reticle is landing exactly on the next line. So 20 clicks will be this line, 50 clicks will be the next dot here. And you can do that for your windage as well. And this just makes sure everything is tracking as it should be. And then when you dial back to 0, making sure that your reticle is landing on this exact dot and it's not half a mil low or something like that. And that is going to be your repeatability test to make sure that your turrets can repeatedly track accurately, so that you're not second guessing yourself if you can trust what you've dialed into your scope. Now, I've never actually seen a scope that has bad tracking or bad enough tracking where I would say I wouldn't use it in match, but I haven't tested anything that I would consider a low quality scope, if you will. So that's paper tracking. And that I run that quite a bit. I care more about my elevation tracking because, again, once I set my windage for my 0, I generally don't touch it. So I'll track my scope elevation through the entirety of its internal elevation and just verify through the entire range. Now, a box test is the same thing, but you're doing it in a square again to test your windage. And then you can also confirm your reticle size relative to the markings on your confirmation target to make sure that your reticle is sized adequately. I guess in some scopes, sometimes the Christmas tree might actually be the wrong size and your holdover markings will be incorrect, which would be a little bit alarming if I ever saw that, but I haven't yet, thankfully.
Right. Yeah. And John last week was talking about the actual movement per click. Like it was like 0.97 or 100%.
Yeah, so if you actually
I never even thought about testing that. Or
if you get into the very, very nitty gritty details of scopes, they're not 100% accurate. If you go through the full 30 mils of elevation, you might be a few clicks off. However, for CRPS, it doesn't matter. If you're shooting, a kilometer regularly with your 22, it might matter. But for CRPS, like 99% accuracy is more than enough. I'm looking for reliability, and the accuracy that I can trust more than anything. Because to be honest, if you want to measure it with that precision, you would do it a lot, in a more controlled environment than just stapling a target I made myself at home to a 50-yard board.
Yeah, but your target looks pretty precise, Matt.
Yeah,
there's homemade, and then there's homemade.
There's this target, you can see I've stapled it to the board a couple times already, but some doofus at the range shot one of my confirmation targets, and it takes me quite a while to make these, so I wasn't very happy at him. He was just shooting targets at 50 yards, and he just started shooting my target, and I was like, dude, I don't want that target to be shot up at all. Please stop that. So anyway, just make sure no one shoots your target if you want to keep it as a confirmation target, because it takes a while to make.
There's actually a question, Aaron Rodriguez. He said, what size of square are your grid? In inches?
So I can't tell you in inches because it's a really weird measure. Because again, this is one mil at 50 yards, which is
I worked it out, Matt. It's 45.5 millimeters.
Yeah.
And then if you want that in inches, it is divided by 0.5. It's 1.79 inches.
Yeah. So keep in mind, this is an angular measurement. So basically, when I want to test, there's 10 mils from the bottom to the top here. If I want to test 20 mils, I'll just put this at 100 yards, and the grids are now 2 mil increments. So this is kind of why I made it this way. The other thing is how I measure this to be as accurate as possible is I get my measurement in millimeters for 5 mils. I do that, and then I kind of break it down into the smaller squares to be as accurate as possible, rather than measuring 1 mil, which can compound an error if you don't have it exact. Yeah.
But yeah, 1 mil at 50 yards is 45.5 millimeters.
Yeah, it's not a nice number, but you do what you do to do tracking tests. Now, it could be a lot easier if you just did 10 centimeters and then put it at 100 meters, because that would give you your mil.
Yeah.
But since the range is in yards, I did this for my range I shoot at. But it would be way easier if you work in meters to do this target. Yeah.
You should shoot MOA then, Matt.
No. Incorrect.
Just pick one unit of measure based on your home range.
If you have the ability to use a 50 meter or 100 meter range to do a calibration target, it's way easier because it's just 50 millimeters or 100 millimeters. But again, my range has 50 yard or 100 yards, so that's why I made this confirmation target in this weird increments. So
I wonder if people sell that. Somebody must sell those targets.
They do. You can also print them. You just have to make sure that your print is sized appropriately to like a legal or letter size page. I can print them off, but they weren't big enough for what I want to do, so I just made my own.
Right.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Anybody who's looking for a less complicated way of doing that, just get yourself a big sheet of paper and shoot, and then dial your turrets and then shoot again, and just measure that distance with like a measuring tape, and then just compare that to what it should be. You don't actually need to make a grid or anything. You can just do it with two groups and measure the grid.
Yeah, you can do it with live fire, which I do as well. I'll do both because sometimes you want to trust it under live fire, but there is some inaccuracies in that because obviously you're measuring a group, which might not be perfect, just depending. But yeah, you can do it with live fire for sure.
Kevin's groups are perfect. That's why.
That's true. Kevin's one-shot groups are the best you'll ever see.
Yeah. Well, it could be 2 shots. We don't know because it's always in the same hole.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess it goes back to how much does it matter. You're measuring the center of a group. My center that I'm going to measure is going to be within.
Yeah. I guess from a gross performance test, basically you could just run it up to the top and then run it back down and make sure you end up in the same spot, right?
Yep.
That's the first test instead of the actual, is the step progression the same?
Yeah. Exactly.
But more of get it all the way up and then get it all the way down. And if it doesn't end in the same spot, you have a problem.
I will say too, for those of you who do not have a way of keeping your rifle perfectly still, like you don't have a gun vise or something like that, a live fire box test is the best way to do it because you're aiming at the same spot and you're measuring your hits around it. So if you can't keep your scope still, doing it with live fire is an easier way to do it as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I had prepared for today. I don't know if you guys have anything to add or if we have questions.
I don't see any questions. I'm looking through. No,
I think we answered them all. That was good.
Yeah. Awesome. Hopefully that answered some questions, help people get settled in. Again, it's all a question of what you're willing to pay for. Gabriel Jones. Gabriel, I know you sent me some questions. I'm going to answer them shortly. Thanks for the note. Optics. This is so the optics setup for X22 challenge. So X22, first off, Gabrielle, is for anybody interested in testing their skill set. It's not a prediction of how good you are. It's just a factor of where you are. So just come on out, try it out. So X22, the challenge with X22 is it's really testing the shooter in a variety of different disciplines. So we have steel at 25 meters, and we'll have steel at 250 meters, and we're using the same rifle and optic setup. So ideally, the ideal setup for me would be a Vortex Razor Gen 3 1-10. That's my perfect setup because you've got, you can survive with a 10 power at 250, but a lot of guys are going to try it with you're gonna spend $4,000 for it.
Rick, go to slide 5 of the slideshow.
Yeah,
you can see my X22 optic setup is on that slide.
This one mounting scope and rings.
Yep. It's hard to see, but there's a red dot on my scope in that picture.
Okay. Where is it? Share.
I actually have a comment on what you can use after Matt shows you what you do.
Let's see. Can we see it? Oh yeah, so you got the red dot right there.
Yeah.
So again, I mean, you can try running with a 3 power. Again, there's only X% of the stages, so 20% of the stages are up close. The others will be 25 to 250, and paper stages will be 50 and 100. So, you can survive with a 3 power or a 4 power lowest setting. But if you wanted to get fancy, you do a 45-degree red dot on there, which I think would work. Or if you had money to throw at the problem, I just get a low power variable optics, 1-12, 1-10, with a good reticle. Some of them are more tactical with a round and a red dot, and not as precise. And then Aaron Rodriguez's question on do sunshades matter? Only if you shoot with the sun's coming at you.
Yeah, sunshades very rarely make a difference, especially since CRPS matches are during the day when the sun is right above you.
The only range it's ever been really useful is at cam loops, where in the morning it comes up right in your eye. So a sunshade can help there. But other than that, some people use it to protect the front lens. It's like sunshades on a camera. We don't use it for flare rarely. It's more to protect the front lens from getting scratched.
It also, most importantly, gives you more real estate to put stickers on. I would say that's the biggest benefit to having a sunshade on your scope, is if you like stickers, you got more real estate for it.
There you go. Yeah. That's it. Any other questions? No, I don't think so.
Here's I think we're going backwards a little bit. I mean, we don't want to go any longer, but back to Gabriel Jones's question.
Yeah.
You guys cut me off there.
Sorry, buddy.
I think I might be able to share my screen, but if you look up a Athlon Helos and 2x12. It's a new scope that they came out with. I'm still waiting. I actually ordered one, but it hasn't arrived yet. It's a really cool scope. It has 2x12 power. And it's got almost like one of those ACOG reticles. I think I can share my screen.
Yeah, you should be able to.
Yeah. If I share this, you'll be able to see. It's actually, you guys see that?
Yep.
You're looking at the scope right now?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's actually, the scope doesn't look like anything fancy. It's an okay. But it's quite powerful. It's got 32 mils of internal elevation adjustment. It's a 10 rotate revolution, 10 mils per revolution, which is really good. And the price, I know this is American MSRP, but I called Wolverine Supplies. This is like the Canadian MSRP that it's going to come in at.
Really?
You'll be able to buy the scope for $650. And it's honestly, I'm not trying to hype them up for just because I bought this. This reticle looks really good for the X22 series. So you can see it on the 2 power because you've got that big ring. You can actually use it like a red dot to crank up your illumination. And then if you want to use it on the long range stages, you just zoom in to 12 power. Then you get yourself like a traditional looking Christmas tree. I mean, it's a little fatter than usual, but still more than usable, I think.
Hey,
so,
Kevin, anyway, Kevin, do you know what size body tube? Do you know what size body tube it has?
Yeah, it's a 30 millimeter tube.
Okay, interesting.
30. Yeah, it's honestly, it's a really, like, for the price, I think this is a huge winner. Because, I mean, again, for CRP, for X22, we're only shooting up to like 200 yards. You don't need the best glass. And honestly, I'm not expecting the best glass from this, but I don't need that. It's the mechanical features that it provides that I think are going to be really, really interesting.
Very cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm gonna run the 45-degree red dot just to be cool and maul ninja.
Yeah. MDT's sending us some rings and caps with a 45-degree mount. Nice. For our X22 build. It's going to be awesome.
Very cool.
Because we got that fancy fluted IBI barrel that we're going to mount onto a nice receiver set.
What's the scope you're going to put on it?
That's a good question. We're gonna put a Vortex Venom red dot on the 45.
Oh, I got that.
It'll probably be a like a 4-16. Either just a Diamondback Tactical. Strike Eagle's overkill for it. PST's overkill for it. Those are 5-25s.
Awesome.
I mean, ideally be like the 1-12 Razor, but that's unobtainable.
Yeah, exactly. Very cool. Can't wait to see it.
Yeah, it should be good. We got the Tandem Cross trigger on it. 1022 trigger. Eager to try that out. Yeah, so it should be. It's not going to be the lightest build, not like your ultralight rig on your piano.
That thing is awesome. I mean, it's not an X22 setup. I kind of made it my race gun setup, but
that could be an X22 setup.
That full rifle is 4.5 pounds, or a little bit over 4.5 pounds. Yeah, it has the carbon barrel on it now, and that foundation chassis. It's very polarizing. I've gotten a lot of messages about it. You either love the aesthetics or absolutely hate it. It's funny. It's funny how many people are just polarized.
But that's a race gun. That's a race gun build. That's the ultimate race gun build.
Yeah, exactly. So. For X22, I'll probably go with something with a little bit longer barrel. This is 12-inch. And then obviously you want a scope instead of just a red dot.
Well, it'd be interesting for you to test it and see what kind of hit ratios you're getting at 250, 275.
That's true. You know what? Maybe I'll just stick a scope on this and run like practice stages just to see
because I'd be interested in seeing where that ends up. Because why not? Because if you don't and do groupings at 50 and 100, because you've got those paper stages there as well, right? So it'll be interesting.
But I am very impressed with the chassis personally, and I'll give you a little a secret. So I won this chassis at the Eastern Championships. I was just lucky enough to get it on the draw prize table. I like it so much I bought another one.
Did you? Nice.
Yeah, I contacted Pre-Purchase and said, "Hey, I want another one. I'm going to buy it. So I'm gonna build Dory an ORPS CRPS rig on this chassis because it's extremely light, and she doesn't like the heavy bolt action. So I just got another one.
And that's perfect for the bipod on the barrel stage.
I was talking about like, I don't know who you're saying what's that to.
Oh, you Kevin, go.
I was talking about business ideas, and like, oh yeah, let's talk about this. We can do investments. We can do this. I think I know why Matt doesn't want to do any businesses or investments. I think he buys a new barrel, scope, rifle, this, that, chassis. Every week he's got something new.
Yeah, but he doesn't play golf.
Yeah, I don't play golf. No, but keep in mind, I got this one for free. So really, I got 2 for 1 here.
That's true. 2 for 1. That's right. It's a 2 for 1 deal.
I got a 2 for 1 deal, and it's awesome.
That's right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Anyway, that's all she wrote for me anyway.
Yeah, I think we're gonna beat a record here. 1 hour and a half.
That's pretty good.
Always been an hour and 45 or something. So.
Yeah, I mean, there's simple topics, but there's a lot to cover, and hopefully people are tuning in. So we're episode 11. There's 10 episodes before that kind of deal with similar deep dives into various aspects of rimfire competitions. So, all right, awesome guys. Any shout outs this week?
Shout out to the Northern Rimfire series, because they managed to reschedule all their matches. Well, hopefully, unless we got locked down again. So I think that's big. Gives some people things to look forward to.
Yeah, they have a ton of matches lined up. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And the border war sounds very interesting as well.
Nice. My shout out is to Greg and the boys at Voodoo for the amazing new rifle with the Ripley Dipley profile that they cut. They were playing around with it. They want to send us something special, so that's going to be profiled in an upcoming build video. So that'll be cool.
Is that what it's actually called? They actually call it the Ripley Dipley?
He said in quotes, we call it the Ripley Dipley profile. Nice. It's nice. I like it. Ripley Dipley. It's different, not the standard fluting. It's kind of an interrupted.
I'm looking forward to seeing that. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I don't handle very expensive guns very often, so we'll see if it impresses me.
It's because you shoot any gun so well, Kevin. You don't need those high-end crutches that everyone else kind of leans on.
Yeah.
Not like Matthews are buying a new gun in search of accuracy every week.
Well, if you're gonna miss, you might as well look cool while you miss, right? So
I just gotta turn your hat back. Isn't that what your Nick said? Just turn your hat back.
Yeah, exactly.
It's fine. I think after he said that comment, there was definitely a huge trend. At least I did it. I put my hat backwards. I thought it was really cool when I did it.
There you go. Any shout outs, Kevin?
No, I think. Well, shout out to Matt for putting together such a great presentation. Honestly.
Thanks, Matt.
It was nice to have a visual like
That's
that.
awesome.
Yeah, and I'm surprised. I think you told him about it this morning at I don't know, lunchtime maybe. And then he sends me this that everyone who watched this presentation, that whole thing was put together in half an hour. I was truly impressed.
And years of experience.
Yeah, well, that's actually what my bachelor degrees was training me for, was putting together PowerPoint presentations in 30 minutes.
Honestly.
Nice.
It was very well done.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome. All right, guys. That's it from Rickster in Montreal. Thank you, gentlemen. Thanks to all of you for tuning in, keeping us company, and keep those questions coming. Again, we broadcast weekly. Next week, we have Martin van Ruitenberg from MDT coming to talk about all things modular-driven technologies. They are releasing crap tons of new stuff, and I know they've got a whole bunch of stuff in the works. So we're looking forward to sitting down with Martin and getting the lowdown on all the different products they've got going. So
hopefully,
next Wednesday.
Hopefully, I'll get my MDT chassis back for the big debut.
We saw that. Yeah. The 2021 sponsorship package shipped yesterday, so cool. It might be here in time for next week.
Awesome.
So that'll be cool. Yeah. Give me some interesting things in there for you guys to be playing around with. So
sweet.
I'll leave it at that for now and let you guys be surprised.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Stay safe. See you guys on the firing line.
Hey, Rick.
Take it easy.
See ya.